Aaron mentioned was Aristotle talking to the polis. This really is kind of the classical idea of what rhetoric is supposed to be. When we think of famous rhetorical situations, we think of Marlon Brando dressed as Mark Antony getting up in the movie Julius Caesar and delivering a speech to the masses of Rome. We think of Hitler with the Nazi flags behind him and waving his arms around, trying to persuade the German people about his ideologies, or we think of spin doctors on the news. But Burke defines this classical idea of rhetoric as the element of explicit design in rhetorical enterprise. The key idea here is explicit design, which implies that there's a real purpose. The person knows what he's going to say, he knows why he's up there, he knows what he's doing. In a sense, he knows that he's a rhetorician, and he knows that he's taking part of a rhetorical situation. The Burke says that we can systematically extend the range of rhetoric. And this kind of broadening of the concept of rhetoric kind of began in the early 20th century. And if we look back at the Bitserian definition, nowhere does it say that you have to have a big audience. Nowhere does it say you have to be a skillful speaker standing behind a podium. Really, a rhetorical situation can simply be having a discussion with your family at dinner, or just having one-on-one conversation about politics or sports or anything. The people involved in these situations, they may not have an explicit design. They may not know that they're in a rhetorical situation, but that doesn't mean that they can't influence the other people's ideologies and change those people's ideas. And then Burke goes on to extend this range even further, saying that you don't even need just a one-on-one conversation. A rhetorical situation can be entirely within your own psyche, just completely by the self. He says that speech is often used by an individual to help understand that which an emotion begins to express. The key part here is that in the whole paper is that emotion is a big part of this. Another good quote that he uses is that rhetoric may not be deliberately imposed on us by some skillful speaker, but it can be imposed upon ourselves. And this kind of goes with the idea that we're not determinate objects; we're emerging subjects, and we're constantly changing and reevaluating what the world means to us, and this can happen within our own psyche. Like I said, emotion plays a big part of this. Sartre says that emotion is a certain way of apprehending the world. We just listened to that jealousy file, and it says that the emotion of jealousy is essential to maintaining and creating healthy relationships. Just like to understand why it's wrong to rob somebody, we have to have the emotion of anger. To know why it's wrong to murder something, we have to know the emotion of sadness, losing somebody that we love, to know and understand why these things are wrong. An interesting thing about emotions is that we can't control them. If we try to control them, they're completely different ideas because they're forced. So an interesting thing about them is that a lot of our understanding about the world comes from these emotions that we can't actually control. Meyer says that passion is what lies beneath logos. This calls for us trying to understand the reasons behind the emotion. So we want to go from emotion to logos, understanding. And Meyer says that this is effective reasoning, getting from this emotion point to the logos point. And I think that's a really, really important part in this emerging subject thing and how we grow as people. And the last thing that they talk about in this section is that Burke was one of the first people to relate rhetorical situations to psychoanalysis. The kind of idea of rhetoric and psychoanalysis aren't necessarily dealing with persuasion, but on identification and trying to get at the root of problems. And I'm not going to go too much into that because Mallory will cover that.